So when people think of addiction, they think of alcoholism, heroin addiction, crack, cocaine, but you have a much broader understanding of addiction.
Yes, it was shown to me. I think it's the relationship between the inner and outer worlds, and those most obvious things, like of heroin, alcoholism, substance misuse, they are merely the most evident form of addiction. I think it's an attachment, a belief that the material and external world can somehow resolve the problems of your inner life. Put more simply, addiction is a behaviour that you would like to stop, and when you try to, you cannot. Addiction begins with pain and it ends with pain. You are in pain, you practice whatever it is you do to get you away from the pain, whether it's pornography or food or sex or drugs, and then it leads to more pain, and then the cycle begins again. So I am increasingly, as I am taught more about the nature of addiction, less and less interested in the object. It's almost better to be a crackhead, because if you are a crackhead, it's pretty clear what the problem is, because you're taking crack. So it's a good entry point into the conversation. If someone's taking crack and they go, I don't know what the problem is, could it be the crack? No! Or if someone's, but if it's someone codependency, toxic relationships, work, they'll deny it all the live long day. Think about it. I found myself in contexts where various forms of my addictive behaviour were lionised. If you're a 20-year-old at a drama school in London and you are a heroin addict and you drink, that's an advantage. People think, oh my God, this guy, he's crazy.
Something.
Yeah, until it's not. Until it's like, yeah, all right, there's a lot of sick everywhere and he's breaking all the windows.
Yeah, well, there's this subtle, insidious form of addiction, like perhaps looking at myself in the mirror, just wanting to be liked all the time. Oh boy, that's exhausting.
Yeah, but it's good, isn't it? Because it's a signal that there's something in you that wants to be fed and nurtured. And the good news about the 12 steps, and that sounds kind of Christian, the good news is the answers are coming. The Lord is present. He is within. The resurrection will happen, and it won't be over there. It will be in here. It will rise again.
So do you think then that addiction is really sort of a spiritual affliction on some level? Like, because it is so broad and it addresses so many pieces of our behavior, it's in essence like we're chasing this desire, this need, but it's based in the material world, and the material world can't make us happy, so then we just keep going back for more. Is that your understanding? Is that your belief?
Yes.
Yeah. And so what then is recovery look like?
For me, recovery looks like the 12 steps. It looks like an admission of a problem, the belief that the problem and your attitude towards it can change, a willingness to accept help, both from other people and to hand over your will and your control, and in my case, a kind of belief and acceptance of a higher power, a different type of consciousness. It looks like making an inventory and sharing that inventory with someone else, being willing to admit that you have problems and being willing to have those problems removed. It looks like step 7 we're at now, being humbly asking for those problems to be removed, a sincere commitment to change. Then an inventorying process that is no longer about the self, but about others, people that have been harmed, and a willingness to make amends to them. And then 10, 11, 12, the final 3 steps, remain conscious and aware all times. Your life is in the moment that you're living in. Step 11, conscious contact with a higher power. Through prayer and meditation, we connect with our own understanding of God. Because as we've discussed already, although it may be only in mine available with subtitles, that the solution to this problem is a spiritual one, a connection to a higher power. Having had this realization, and this is significant, and we're a departure from most insular and I would say somewhat narcissistic theology or practice is pertinent, is step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening, we carry this message and we serve others. So for me, that's what recovery looks like. There are translations and interpretations, and there are tweaks. But for me, the principles not only apply in 12-step methodology, but also I've seen comparative ideas in Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, even sort of secular and materialist ideologies. In the end, There has to be a sort of, or even psychiatry say, an acceptance that there's an aspect of yourself that has to be overcome.
And right now for you personally, are you living in the vibration of step 12? I mean, I see what you're doing. You're putting yourself out there to essentially help others. Is that what provides meaning on the other side of recovery?
I don't see myself as being so far down the path of recovery that I am in this luxurious position of being able to help others. In many senses, I'm in the same position I was in when I was a crack and heroin addict. The program works, so I continue to work the program. I suppose, in a way, because I've got a particular set of skills, I am now alloying those skills with what I've learned. I mean, primarily as a communicator and an entertainer. Communicator is a good word to mispronounce, huh? So, you know, I don't see myself as evolved or advanced beyond the 12 steps because, in a sense, there was nothing that needed to be evolved or advanced. I just needed to recognise that what I thought was a yearning for heroin or other people's approval or fame or money was this requirement for a connection to God. As someone, a teacher of mine once said, all forms of desire are the inappropriate substitute for the desire to be at one with God. It's good, isn't it? And he told me that when I was quite young, and it took me ages to listen. I was 27.
And so you wrote a quite brilliant book on mentorship.
Thanks.
I've enjoyed it. I've listened to it in the car on my trips. And obviously you've taken this quite seriously because here you are, you know, working with groups of people on a regular basis, trying to help them essentially realize these things that you have been fortunate in some ways enough to realize. Can you talk about the importance of mentorship a bit and how it's baked into the 12-step, what it means for you?
Whilst the 12 steps can be worked in isolation, the intention of some of the original forms of literature of 12-step philosophy was that it could be worked in alienation and isolation for people that were just geographically isolated. It, in my experience, and I think this is common to people that have a 12-step program, is best worked communally for a number of reasons. One, the acknowledgement that other people have got lives and problems, and the sort of belief that your own life and problem is the centre of the galaxy is a peculiar, if understandable one, due to the way that the senses work. But particularly having someone, as it were, upstream, a mentor, a teacher, or in my case multiple, but one in particular with the 12-step program, is like the acknowledgement that I don't run the show of my life anymore. I don't, if I like, you know, look, all of these things for me is a process of negotiation and going backwards and forwards and thinking, no, I can do it the old way again. I still have the problems that I've always had to a degree. That's what's somewhat complex about this philosophy. But when I'm afraid or I feel inadequate or like I've got problems and I'm thinking, oh, this is what I'm going to do to solve these problems, I talk to someone else and I say, I've got this problem, I'm thinking about doing this, what do you think? Right. And my sponsor or mentor, without fail, will say, well, you know, I don't have any advice or an opinion, but my experience is that when you do things like this, X, and it's usually boils down to, don't fucking do that, you idiot.
So it's a bit of an ego check.
Yeah. And an ego check and a sort of an acknowledgement of the limitations of the ego, you know, of like, or, you know, maybe I don't know enough about psychiatry to use the term ego accurately, but whatever is the sort of the parameters, the circumference of the ecosystem of my intelligence, the kind of decisions that I make, the kind of relationships that I form, the kind of mistakes that I make, if I'm to alter that, it's good to have some external input.